Alright, so I've got a quick question. What's the blaster you've wanted to get your hands on for the longest? For me, it's Gavin Fuzzy's SPAMF. Hi guys, Hans Armor here, and today we're looking at the Gavin Fuzzy SPAMF. Now this is by no means a new blaster or a new mod. This is at this point, an old community favorite. It takes the wonderful Falcon Fire, which is one of my favorite aesthetic and just base blasters from recent history, and gives it a pusher breech that takes half-length magazines. It does have a wild card mag well, so it can take both Talon and Katana magazines and their clones. And it's a very awesome build. I did this all up with some eSun Fire Truck Red PLA, which I am a huge fan of course with a orange tip on the front because safety first. And this is a really awesome build, but here's the key. I built it, I printed it, and that's new. I think at the beginning of the summer, Gavin Fuzzy changed the SPAMF from being an all buy the kits from his store situation to us, the community, being able to buy the files from him and then also buy hardware kits. So when I saw that happen, I knew eventually I would have to get my hands on the files and a hardware kit to do a review for you guys on the build. So that being said, let's jump into a time lapse and I'll tell you a little bit more about how this build went. So to start off this build, I'm going to open up the hardware kit and null out my parts. This is simply sorting by type, so everything is clearly out in front of you. I wanted to start this build from the very beginning of me opening the hardware kit, so you saw just how simple this build is. I'm following the instructions you get from Gavin Fuzzy when you buy the kit. Before I made this Falcon Fire into a SPAMF, I had a brass breech in it, so that's why there's no stock internals in here at the moment. That being said, it is the stock spring and a spacer, which I carried over to the SPAMF. Something you'll notice as I get into building the magazine catch system is I am very liberal with my use of super lube and just generally lubricating the moving parts of this blaster. That's just something I like to do so that everything slides nice and smooth and there's no binding. It also helps the printed parts last a little bit longer. Now these are the two screws you're going to need to keep from the original shell that hold the grip to the actual sides of the shell. I wasn't sure if I was going to need those at first, so I didn't put them in my screw cup. And here, as I finish buttoning everything up and throw on the grip, that's the entire build. So there's one more part of this build that I haven't covered yet, and that is this grip. This is obviously not the original Falcon Fire grip. This is a 3D printed grip designed by Orion's Blasters. It is one piece of printed plastic that I did up in the same eSun red as the rest of the blaster, so it all matches nicely. And it is oh so very comfortable. I love the original Falcon Fire grip, and so I wasn't too excited about doing a replacement grip, but I was struggling to match this red, and I didn't really want to put another color on the blaster, so I went for it. And it fixed the one ergonomic problem I had with this blaster, and that is the length of pull of the trigger. Originally it was just a little short for me, but as soon as I put this grip on, I noticed that that's just about perfect. It's very comfortable in the web of my hand. My index finger falls right with the pad on the trigger. And when I pull the trigger, my index finger and thumb are almost touching, which I think is right where, there is where the break in the sear is. So that is wonderful. Now it is only held on by friction. Simply it is slid on the bottom with no screws, no fasteners, no clips. But yeah, that's not going anywhere fast. There is a hole in the bottom, I'm assuming to take something like a screwdriver or a punch to help force off the grip, but frankly, I'm not gonna touch it. That's just perfect. So yeah, link in the description below. Orion Blasters, they make some cool stuff. So yeah, the SPAMF has dethroned the Hyper for my easiest 3D printed blaster build. This was such a breeze to put together that I purposely put up on my Instagram, hey, I'm about to start this build video, and half an hour later I was posting a follow-up video that was, oh wow, I'm done already. It is so simple, and the tolerances are in that perfect spot where they're tight enough that you get a good final product, but they're loose enough that if you have a slightly unreliable printer like mine, you can still put it together. I didn't do any cleanup work on any of the parts before I started that time lapse, and that when I sat down to build it, and I was so pleasantly surprised at how quick and easy this build is. I would definitely recommend, if you have a printer and want to get into printing your own blasters, this is a great place to start. The hardware kit is not very expensive, and the files come with a license that let you print as many as you want, as long as you're not selling them for profit. I think the exact wording is something, if they're paying you in filament, it's fine, but you know, look at your licenses when you're making blasters, especially for friends, just to make sure you're doing it right, because we like to support our own designers. Now, all that being said, I do have one problem, so I'm going to jump to a close-up because I can't really show it to you back here. So now I've got it open, let's talk about the two problems I ran into. The first one was that my barrel wiggled about 15 degrees laterally. Now this simply meant that these connections here weren't secure enough, and so in order to fix that, I simply put some pads of duct tape and a couple contact points to decrease the amount of wiggle room there was. I think this is a total of 3, maybe 4 layers of duct tape, just carved out nicely so you can barely see it when the blaster is closed, and that it doesn't get in the way of any of the magazine catch holes or the pusher, as well as not interacting with the slide on those rails. This fixed the problem perfectly, and while you could have just glued the magwell in place, that might have created a permanent tilt in the barrel, as well as permanently affixing your magwell to a side of your frame, and I wasn't excited about that idea. This solution works perfectly fine, and I would totally suggest, if you have the same problem, to do something like this. The second problem is with the pusher on the breech, more specifically the O-ring on the pusher. For me, every 50 shots or so, when I prime the blaster, the O-ring comes popping off, and I think that's because it gets caught on the, as it comes back, gets caught on the follower and just gets popped off the end of the breech. Now this is not great, obviously, and luckily Gavin Fuzzy sent some spare O-rings in the kit, so whereas I lost one, I was able to replace it. This has happened 3 or 4 times over the last week or 2 in which I've had this blaster put together. I don't know. My personal idea is that, it gets caught on the follower, but if you have any idea what's causing this problem, please let me know in the comments, because this is the problem I need to help figuring out. That being said, those are the only problems I had building this blaster from scratch, and I don't have any other complaints. So the question came up in my Tornado droplet holster review of, does the SPAMF fit? And just like with the blaster parts holsters and the other cheap holsters I have, this blaster is very hard to holster if you have a magazine coming out the bottom. There's one easy way to get around this, and that is to switch to a purpose-made 3-round little stubby magazine that fits flush. Now this is a custom magazine I sliced up in Fusion 360. If you're interested in the files, I can throw them up on my Thingiverse, but they're not there now. If they end up there, I'll put a link down in the description. Now with this, I can fit this blaster into any of my holsters just fine, but it only gives me 3 rounds. Makes it a little bit harder to use, especially as a sidearm, though as a secondary, it's not that bad. This is a surprise to no one. The SPAMF is just awesome. I love this blaster, especially with the Orion Blaster's grip on it. It just took an already super comfortable blaster and just fixed that one little problem I had of the trigger length of pull, and just perfect. I love this blaster. I can't wait for Wars to come back so I can actually run it, and maybe it can earn a name. We'll see. But there's one more thing with the SPAMF, and that's, if you've been paying attention recently, there is now a pump action kit to make this a so-called super SPAMF. If you're interested in seeing that, please leave a like and a comment down below, and if enough people show interest, I might get my hands on it just to test out. That being said, I'm not going to cover performance in this video. If you don't know what you can do with this thing as far as performance-wise, please go look at some of the couple years old video from when this first came out. A lot of people covered this blaster and all the crazy things you can do with it. My suggestion is go check out Bradley Phillips's build with this blaster, where he cranked it up to 12 and got it to hit like 200 FPS and was pinpoint accurate. But that's just kind of what that guy does, so why are we surprised at this point? That being said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, a comment, maybe even a subscribe. I am really enjoying to keep doing this YouTube stuff, and I cannot wait to see you guys next time.